So Jarvis, Falcons are trying to move on and reset to get ready for the Panthers on Sunday. But real talk, that game against the Bengals, man, it kind of happened in the worst way possible, whether you look at it from the perspective of going down early 21 to nothing, or you look at it from the perspective of being down player after player after player, especially in the secondary. It was just the worst possible scenario, at least from what it appeared to be. But Jarvis, there is a silver lining in everything. So I'm thinking to myself, what's the silver lining here? And I have thoughts, but I want to hear what you have to say first about what you thought might actually be a potentially a good thing from what went down Sunday in Cincinnati.
The first thing that comes to mind is that when you looking at a couple of things, right? So when you start off with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, that is a very good wide receiver group. It is, and oh yeah, throw in
You
Hayden
called
Hurst
it
as well.
early
I
too.
thought,
You called
yeah,
it
I was just
early.
like, that is it. And then to run that offense out on the field, and then defensively, you can't even combat that because not only you have your number two corner is down already on
Mhm,
IR, then your
mhm.
number one corner goes down, and
Yes.
then essentially you're playing a guy that you just brought off of the practice squad. Like so, it
Right.
was the worst case scenario for the Atlanta Falcons. So given the case, you're
Hmm.
down multiple scores throughout the game, right? And even three scores at one point when you're
Yes.
down 21-0. So the positive though is the fact that it puts you in a situation, okay, once we get ourselves down multiple scores, because they've been in
Hmm.
every game. They were
Yes.
undefeated against the spread. So whatever Las Vegas was thinking, the Falcons had
Right.
something to say about that. So
Yes.
when you're down multiple scores in a
Hmm.
game, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? I'm not sitting up here saying you're going to throw this bad boy 40 times because that is the
Hmm.
bad idea.
Right.
Arthur Smith thinks it's a bad idea. That's why he's
Yep.
held Marcus Mariota as close to 20, under 20 throws a game as
True.
possible.
True.
And
True.
I'm sitting up here with my naked bachelor's degree in football eyes, and I'm sitting up here saying, you know what? That's a bad idea for Marcus Mariota as well.
Right.
So I think the good thing is that it happened now because I don't think you're going to face that type of personnel, for the rest of the season. You got
Yeah.
the Panthers twice. You got the Chargers who are dealing with injuries and wide receivers.
Hmm.
They do have that's probably about the closest that you have if those guys are healthy. And
Yeah.
then you got the Bucks again, who we already know what they got going on offensively.
Hmm.
And we also have the Saints as well for one more time. So
And like you
looking
said,
at
they're banged up a little bit too. Chris Olave back and forth, and even
right,
if you throw the
yes.
Steelers in there before the bye, we got George Pickens, and that's all we got.
Yes, so I think that those are yes, I like how you slid that in there. So when you think about the worst case scenario happening for the Falcons, I like the fact that it's going to force the Falcons going forward to have a plan when you get punched in the face, and they
Hmm.
got punched in the face, and hopefully you get healthier, and this is be the bottom, like this is the bottom as far as dealing with injuries, and you
Hmm.
start to get healthier as the season goes along. You don't have to be in a situation where you're not even going to bat with you're going to a dog fight. You're going
Hmm.
into a dog fight with a rubber band. Trying to thump somebody. So
Yeah.
I think that that's the silver lining for me, that they got put into a situation that probably is not going to happen again.
Hmm.
But just in case it does happen, you
Yeah.
got a plan.
Exactly. And I would say as well, now I'm going to take one guy out of this. I'm going to take Caleb McGarry out of the comment I'm about to make. But for the
Hmm.
most part, the O line didn't get jobbed. The reason I'm
Yeah.
mentioning that, Jarvis, is because we're now 7 weeks into the season and the O line isn't decimated. I mean, we're
Yeah.
literally working with
They've
the
been healthy.
same
Yeah.
O line almost a third of the season. When have you and I been able to say that? It's been at least 3 or 4 seasons since we've been able to say that three of the five O linemen are actually the same ones you started the season with, right? So
Right.
while it wasn't the greatest performance ever, it definitely was not a bad performance by the O line because, hey, they tried their best to work with what Marcus Mariota was giving them. It's not their fault what was happening under center, right? So I
Right.
do also think that's a silver lining that for Terry Fontenot, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this tomorrow, because like Jarvis said, Bucks Ravens has trade implications potentially for the Falcons, and we'll talk about it again Friday as well. Give you some afterthought, but right now, Jarvis, you're thinking about the fact that hey, for once, the Falcons don't have to go out there digging for an O lineman, which is very difficult to find. You actually
Yes.
might have a little bit of a better shot finding a DB. at this point who, for whatever reason, doesn't fit with his current team or didn't fit, but might just fit this scheme. So I love where you're going with it, finding the positive and saying, okay, hey, you've had the worst case scenario and you're only 7 games into the season. Now you can really get cracking, Arthur Smith. Another thing is sometimes you cut your losses when you get to this point in the season. You try to work with somebody, and it just ain't happening. And that's what it was for Marlon Davidson. We love us some Marlon Davidson, second round pick in the 2020 draft for the Falcons. Amazing guy who had loads of potential and promise, but never just real results. Body just would not allow for it. Whether it was 2 bouts with COVID, a knee injury, you name it, it happened. So they decided, the Falcons, to cut ties with him yesterday. And Jarvis, my thought then went back to the 2020 draft overall. AJ Terrell, like we said, Marlon Davidson, Michael Walker, and Jalen Hawkins, Sterling Hoffrichter. And I'm thinking of those guys and I'm like, oh, and Matt Hennessy. So that's your 6, right?
As well. Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about that. That essentially was the end of the Thomas Dimitroff, Dan Quinn co-builder era. And I said, kind of makes you have a requiem on it, if you will. We know Sterling Hoffrichter is gone. So now you're down to the final 5. And it's very interesting to say, okay, now we're actually down to the final 4 of a requiem on what TD, and DQ did before they exited stage left.
And when you talk about getting a guy like Jalen Hawkins in the 4th round,
yes, and Michael Walker too, our guy.
both of those 4th round picks hit. Like those are the type of guys. And I'm sitting here looking at a draft grade, they gave Michael Walker a C+. That was a C+ grade. That just lets you know that draft grades the day after the draft is over are ridiculous, and you can throw them out. And they graded out AJ Terrell as a C+ as well. So go ahead and burn that bad boy. So I think that you have some staples. They can thank Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff for those guys. But obviously, you talking about a 2nd round pick of Marlon Davidson, though. I think that's the thing that kind of really sticks out, and it kind of spoke to what Thomas Dimitroff and Dan Quinn did just overall. And when you think about how you have to look at them from a 30,000-foot view or a global view, or so to speak.
Yes.
Because they would hit on some of those mid to late round guys, but they would miss badly on the early round guys. And you're just like, oh my goodness. Like you got Matt Ryan, right? And that was pretty much it, when you think about all of those first round draft picks that just did not work out, from Vic Beasley to Takk McKinley, just all of those guys. And but when you think about, though, they did leave that gift when you talking about Jalen Hawkins, Michael Walker. Those guys are 2 starters for you. AJ Terrell, probably grading out as one of the top corners in the NFL. That's going to be all right. And you kind of ease the pain of Marlon Davidson going away, because that was kind of hurts me a little bit, because I got a chance to talk to him, coming into training camp. He was saying this was the first camp in 2 years where he's been able to squat. Because as a defensive lineman, I can't imagine that. I can't understand that, because those are that's where most of your power comes from, if not all. Like, I mean, I know people like, oh yeah, I could bench 500 pounds. But how much do you squat, young man? Like, how much do you squat, young man? Because that's going to determine whether or not you're going to be a good defensive lineman or not. So I was rooting for this guy. And obviously, this is the end result that we kind of figured and we kind of talked about as well when he went on IR initially. So it's truly unfortunate, but it does kind of make you think, like, all right, hopefully he gets another shot. And it kind of makes you think, like, okay, Thomas Dimitroff, Dan Quinn, y'all were a little suspect, but they definitely left some jewels in that draft.
Yes, and that's what I was thinking as well. Like, whoa, 2020 might actually be, even though it was their last draft, it might technically be their best draft now that we're a couple of seasons out. And you and I spoke to Michael Walker. We had him on our podcast right after his rookie season, going into his 2nd year. And that was one where Pro Football Focus had recognized what he was doing on the field and saying, hey, they graded him quite high, I think highest in the league at his position as a rookie. So like you said, those 3 jewels, they actually left jewels for Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith to work with. That could arguably be, when it's all said and done, the best class that tandem actually came to, and also showing you what can be done in those later rounds if you have a little bit of an eye for it. Now, the other piece there is this. We've been talking about it, and we're going to continue to talk about it as far as like gems and jewels. Sometimes it's players, other times it's games. And you know what a jewel of a game is going to be? We already called it. It's Ravens Bucks. That's one of the 5 games that we'll be taking a look at. And granted, most of the game that NFL Locked On Key Predictions focuses on will be the games on Sunday and Monday night, right? So we got you
Right.
there as well. But one of those big games, of course, is going to happen tomorrow night. Now, if you check in for those NFL Key Predictions on Friday, of course, stopping here at ATL Day One's first, and then going out to the Locked On Sports Network to check out NFL Today and check out those key predictions. Man, we've got doozies. And you know me, guys. You know I'm a Steelers fan. So, of course, I'm going to have my eyes on Browns Bengals to see what's going on. But anyway, you can catch them wherever you check out your podcast. You can go to the Odyssey app as well. And they've got all the goods for you in and around the league, giving you their predictions and their thoughts that might just help you, like Jarvis said, to go to BetOnline and actually know a little bit about what those guys are talking about in terms of where you should bet for this coming weekend. So going to be a good week 8, and NFL Locked On has you ready to rock and roll with those predictions.